Welcome to Sufi Magic. Language is a system to communicate with each other. So far, there has been no culture which lacks some kind of language. Its structure is called grammar, and its three parts are called vocabulary. Among all the living things, human beings have the most unique language, which has the ability to change completely with time and space. And in this part of the chapter, I am going to tell you some of the amazing things about this gift given to the Adam. A while ago, a linguistics expert named Chomsky presented a theory called the universal grammar. Its technical definition says for the language, there are some sum of rules which are biologically present in every human being. For example, children who are born with the ability to learn the language. If you teach a language to a parrot or a child, then children will learn far extensive language than parrots, or in simple terms, human beings have something in them which knows how to speak. It is all wonderful to tell and listen, but where is the proof? I want to tell you about an interesting experiment in human history. In Nicaragua, in the year 1980, an experiment was conducted in a school of dumb and deaf children. These children were left alone with each other for the first time and observed. These children belonged from the villages and were unaware and unlearned of any kind of sign language prior than this. In fact, they were unaware of any kind of education or skill. And by this experiment, linguists wanted to learn that how these children will communicate with each other upon their first contact. The children were observed, their behavior was documented, and to translate their gestures and signs, a linguist, Dr. Kegel from America, was hired, who, with great effort, created a kind of a dictionary for these children's signs and gestures to understand that which signs means what. And how was this dictionary created? These children were shown the same cartoon individually and were asked to explain their actions. When these children started to explain in their own signs, the linguists were actually amazed, because their signs were not random or fragmented at all. They resembled to each other more or less the same. Not only did their signs resemble, but they were very organized signs too. They had rules. These signs had rules in them. The linguists had never imagined that they will be witnessing the birth of a language, and the language was named Nicaraguan Sign Language, a living evidence discovered accidentally in the result of an experiment. That language is in fact hardwired within us. It seems that as if someone had given the human a core base for language, he had given the man the names of everything, the vocabulary, and with passing time, this core base kept on developing. New words kept on developing because this gift to Adam was open-ended, which means that although the letters of this core base are limited, but the ideas generated from those words are limitless. This ability of our language is called dual code. There is a research facility in Switzerland called the Blue Brain Project. They conduct research on brain and its neurons, and for a long time it was considered that these neurons only develop circuits and connections when we pass through some kind of good or bad experience, and the memory of that experience develops in the form of those circuits. But according to the Blue Brain Project research, there were 50 neurons which were creating signals with each other without any life experience. It means that there must be something innate or inborn or a certain natural knowledge present within it, a knowledge of something. Since our birth, a complex and a complicated knowledge, the knowledge of language, the gift of language given to us, placed within us by someone long before our consciousness, and this can be felt by anyone from any part of the world. That language had been installed within us as a gift. Perhaps this is why, to discover the mysteries of the language, incredible experiments have been conducted in human history. That what was the nature of that core base placed within the human being? Herodotus speaks about a pharaoh past 2,700 years ago called Psammetichus, and he writes that Psammetichus conducted an experiment where he gave the custody of 2 infants to a shepherd living in a faraway village and asked him to look after those infants, feed them, take care of them, love them, but do no speak to them in any kind of way, and only listen to them carefully, that if they speak to each other, what language will they use? And the shepherd complied. And one day, one of the two children spoke his first words. He stretched his hand out towards the shepherd and said, "Because." But the shepherd did not understand the word, for he heard it for the first time. And it is clear why, because the word because was a word neither from that area nor from that century. This word was to be spoken 2,000 miles away from Egypt, and 500 years later in Turkey, and it would be meant bread. In the year 1580, a Christian missionary called Father Montserrat came to India from Portugal. It was the time of King Akbar to rule over India. Father Montserrat spent a long time in Akbar's court and used to record everyday activities of royal court into his memoirs like a journal. These journals were in Latin language and were lost after the death of Father Montserrat. But in the year 1914, this historical document was accidentally discovered in an old library of Calcutta. These documents were published as the commentaries of Father Montserrat, and in this document, Father Montserrat writes about an experiment of King Akbar. He writes that the great King Akbar conducted an experiment in the year 1601. He sent some of the infants to a castle deep into the jungle and assigned a few dumb and deaf women with them to nurse them. The purpose of this experiment was that those children would never hear any voice of any kind, human or animal, and Akbar deducted that should his experiment was to be a success, finally, to communicate with each other, the children would surely use the language, which would be the language of nature and of the divine. And strangely, the children actually did use a strange language too, to communicate with each other, but then went quiet and never spoke a word for the rest of their lives. Similar experiments have been conducted by a Scottish King James, and the word spoken then was similar to a word in Hebrew language. A similar experiment was conducted by a Holy Roman, Emperor Frederick I. But it is needless to discuss all of them in here. But what I am trying to tell you is that Name-Date House roamed this earth nearly 400,000 years, but in all this time, they could not even utter the letter N, because they were not humans. They were another kind of creature, who were not given the gift of ability to speak, the gift of language. This is the reason they could not speak for 400,000 years, because the ability of language was not hardwired within them. And the children of Adam, the human, there are 7,000 languages spoken in the world today and in Surah Rum. Look what is written about the miracle of language. His signs are in the diversity of your colors and languages. At this point, it should become clear to you that Name-Date House were a completely different creature. We cannot call them humans. They were a creature with very basic needs whose sole purpose was to eat, sleep, defecate, and procreate. A creature that, according to 184th verse of Surah Shura, perfectly fits the definition of Jabilatul or Walim, a creature with basic needs. Fear him, he who created you and those before you with very basic needs. But for the Adam, in the 3rd and 4th verse of Surah Rahman, what could be more obvious than he created human and taught him to speak? Allah created the human and taught him how to speak. After the creation of human, when this gift was given, which was not given to any of the ones before Adam, the gift of speech, the ability to speak, and only a few thousand years after Adam was descended to this earth, how the entire world changed. To know that, you have to listen very carefully. After the descent of Adam and Eve into this world, they had a grandson called Hazrat Idris, who lived through 308 years of his grandfather Adam. He is mentioned at least twice in Quran, Surah Maryam and Surah Anbiya, and it is very important for you know about Idris because in the coming 2 chapters, the role of Idris will be very important. But before that, I want to tell you about a report by Muawiyah bin Hakam, that once he asked the Prophet about Khati Ramal, meaning the practice of writing in sand and clay, upon which the Prophet replied that indeed there has been a messenger who practiced it, and Ibn Ishaq says that it was Prophet Idris's Now my question from you is that when I talk about writing in clay, what immediately comes to your mind? Ancient practice of writing in clay and sand is known to us today as clay tablets, inscribed tablets of clay. Just like Urdu script is called Nastaliq, or the Arabic script is called Abjad, or the Hindi script is called Devanagari, this ancient form of writing is called the cuneiform script. Centuries-old tablets, on which the oldest form of writing is inscribed, was written and recorded upon baked clay and sand tablets. I will now show you 5,000 years old Sumerian tablets and will tell you some of the words inscribed on them, and pay attention to what it says: star, month, man, king, crop, bull, destiny, fish, Nineveh, night and God. What do these words tell you? Unlike name, date, house, these words show a very systematic and civilized society. These words show that merely after a few thousand years of name, date, house, the son of Adam were talking about agriculture, status of a human, and concepts like time, animals and food were established very well. Something on a grand scale must have happened, which created such a huge difference between two of these creatures or species, and that was, without a doubt, teaching Adam the names of everything, and descend him down to this earth. Let me tell you for your interest, that name, date, house are not from a distant past. They appear 400,000 years ago in the history of this world. If a long period of time means chimpanzee evolves into a human, then the oldest living organism in this world is actually jellyfish, which has been living in this world since 500 million years. But during these 500 million years, let alone the language, even the brain did not develop in them. Jellyfish is an organism without brain, but human, the newest species of all, let alone brain. He has developed 7,000 variations of languages alone. As per these tablets, I have only told you the meaning of a few words. 6,000 of the tablets contain the inscriptions of laws alone, and in the rest of the tablets, inscriptions about Sumer's foreign relations, some of the divine prayers, the use of medicine, and inscriptions about celestial objects, some of the poems and folklores, the inscriptions about the creation of universe, and one of the tablets contains the word Adapa, who was the first human made of clay. According to this tablet, and in my opinion, this reference could only be to Prophet Adam, and one of the tablets contain the entire story about the great flood of Noah, which we know today as the flood tablet. One of the folklores on tablets contain a very interesting story, which someone apparently wrote for his child. I will read you a passage from that story. There was a man who lived in the city of Nippur. He was extremely poor, and his name was Jimal. He was very sad. He used to do much hard work, but neither did he have any silver nor gold. He did not even have wheat at his home, and he was very upset for this. His sadness was reflected on his face, and his clothes were very dirty. One day he decided that, and the story goes, but doesn't this story surprise you? If I hadn't told you that this story was written by someone 5,000 years ago, perhaps you wouldn't even realize, because even today, we tell our children similar sorts of stories, and just pay attention to what this story tells. Emotions, feelings, status in the society, the importance of clean clothes, the importance of things like wheat and silver and gold, are all the signs of a civilized society. Such a society and animal-like creatures a few thousand years before them does not seem any different to you. I had told you about a grandson of Adam, called Idris. Idris lived in the life of Adam. He was also a messenger of Allah. He was the first to observe the movements of celestial objects. He was the first to create scientific weights and measurements, and he was the first to use the pen. He is mentioned twice in Quran, and one of the place saying that we lifted him to a high place, which in itself is a very interesting and an amazing topic, and I will tell you about that in the coming chapters. A few thousand years after Prophet Idris, the Sumerian civilization established, and from the teachings of Idris, they learned it to inscribe the tablets. They invented the cuneiform script. From these teachings, they designed the system of 60 minutes and 60-second time system. It was the name of Idris, whence the Arabic word for teaching, Daus. is sourced, and according to Imam Tabari, one of the gifts given to him was knowledge and wisdom. What amazing knowledge it was, we can only imagine, but a fraction of his knowledge can be witnessed in the Sumerian civilization, a prophet who inscribed in clay, the clay tablets. In 2018, Dr. Margaret Boone published a research that how, psychologically, emotionally, and genetically, a human is completely different from these species. Among all of these species, it is only the human brain and genome that can process a complex system like religion. The parietal lobe, placed in the back of our brain, is larger in size and can perform better analysis, a better learning skill, and the ability to be selfless, submissive, and aggressive at the same time. According to the research of Dr. Margaret Boone, Homo sapiens is a very intricate, detailed, and a creature with an amazing design, but compared to humans, genetic and neurological remnants taken from Neanderthal skeletons do not give any signs of their processing ability towards a complex system like religion. Now my question to you is that have you already heard these things somewhere? Think about it for a moment. The definition of signifying humans from all of the other creatures has come across you ever before. A learning creature, which can be selfless and whose design is intricate and detailed, but is, at the same time, arrogant, can process religion better than any other creature, but is ignorant. Think about it before this famous research work in 2018. Where did you read all this? I will tell you, Surah team. We created man in the finest form, then lowered him from the lowest of the low, a creature with the finest design which can reduce himself lower than the lowest. Surah Azab. We offered the trust to the heavens and earth and mountains, but they declined, being fearful of it, but the human assumed it. For he is truly wrongful and ignorant, a creature able to process the complex structure such as religion, human being, but after assuming the charge for religion, still acting ignorant, human being. To write this chapter, I studied the fossils of pre-Adamites in great details, and wherever I saw scientific reasoning about the distinction of these species being completely different from each other, I saw the same reasoning given in Quran at a very advanced level of understanding. All the answers are there. One just has to find them. Before I finish, I want to share a story from an 11th century book called Al-Khazari, which was written by a Judeo-Spanish rabbi, Yehuda Halevi. With honesty, he speaks of a king from the kingdom of Khazar, which is an ancient empire between the modern-day Turkey and Iraq. He once asked a question from a Jew, Christian, and a Muslim scholar in his court, that which religion is the true religion. I have been informed that Indian claim to have buildings thousands of years old, upon which the Jewish scholar said that since there is no permanent religions in India, I would suggest you to not to take their claims seriously. Similarly, the Christian scholar too declared the ancient Indian religion dissolute, but the Muslim scholar gave a very unique answer, that it does not shake my belief, because Adam and Noah were the first humans, and I am surprised that basically this was the simplest, but the most accurate answer. I am surprised how clear were the concepts of first-generation Muslims, that the children of Adam and pre-Adamite creatures were entirely different species. They were different kinds of living beings. This world was not always ours, and neither will it always remain ours. Adam was sent here from somewhere else, and before Adam, someone else was inhabiting this earth. But always keep those verses of Surah Fatir in your mind, that if he wills, he can remove all of you and bring an entirely new creation, and this will not be difficult for him at all. Before I complete this chapter, I want to tell you about a relatively new branch of study of this gift of God, the gift of language or speech. Allah taught the names of everything to humans according to Surah Baqarah, or according to Surah Rahman. Allah taught the man how to speak, but the guidance for the use of language will be present in Quran, and a guidance on which proper research work was only available in 2015. For me, That was a pleasant surprise. Arabic language is mentioned in Quran at least 10 times. On 2 of those places, the Arabic language is appreciated, that the Arabic of Quran is clear, and that there is no flaw in this language. And on 2 of the places give the reason for a Quran in Arabic, that this is the language of the people you are assigned to. But the 2 verses I want to tell you about are in Surah Yusuf and Surah Zukhruf, with a difference of just 1 word. The verse is absolutely the same, that we have descended this Quran in Arabic language, so you will get the understanding. I and you must have passed this verse, reciting it a dozen times, but since our native language is Urdu, so neither me nor you must have paid much attention to its original Arabic words, and according to the exact Arabic word, the translation would be something like, we descended this Quran in Arabic so you may get the wisdom. And this raises a question, that what is the connection between the language and wisdom? Is an Arabic speaker wiser than Urdu speaker? And what does wisdom mean anyway? The Arabic word for wisdom is Aql, and Taj al-Yaruz, which is the most extensive and largest dictionary of Arabic in history, defines wisdom as using a knowledge with pure intelligence. And what I am about to tell you, its authentic scientific data, is only available since 2015, when a Ukrainian scientist, Dr. Lera Boroditsky, who is a cognitive scientist from Northwestern and Stanford University, she started to work on a brand new branch of study called Neurolinguistics. Now, what is this Neurolinguistics? In simple terms, it means that the language we speak, how does it affect the function of our brain? There are 7,000 languages spoken in the world today, and Urdu is one of them. Have you ever seen the Aboriginal people from Australia? They are the native people of Australia, who have been living there for centuries. There is a certain community of these Aboriginals called the Qurayos, and this community does not have any words for right and left. Instead, they say everything in the sense of east, west, north and south. For example, if you want to say them hello, how are you, then you would ask them that where are you heading? And he will reply, I am heading east. And in their language it means I'm perfectly all right. And because of the language of these Qurayos, a sense of perfect navigation or cardinal direction has been developed in them. You can leave them during the day. During the night, near or hundreds of miles deep into the wilderness, they will still find their way back to home without any compass. You will be seeing 2 pictures in video, in which you will be seeing 4 colors. Typically an Urdu or English speaker would identify these 4 colors as blue, but in Russian language, anyone with a basic vocabulary would be identifying these shades of blue with different names in Russian language, which are Glauboy and Sini. It does not seem to be a huge difference, but upon showing these shades of blue to Russian and English speakers, when their brain activity was observed, the brain activity of Russian speakers was twice as much as English speakers, because a new word for every shade of blue was creating a new signal in their neurons, resulting in more brain activity than the English speakers. Now I'll tell you about a third test. What is the gender of sun to us? All the native Urdu speakers refer to the sun as masculine. For example, the sun risen or set, with a masculine form. And if someone asks us to describe the sun, the word association in our mind for the sun will also be masculine. For example, the sun is great, the sun is powerful, etc. But in German language, it is the other way around. In German language, the sun is referred as feminine, called die Sonne, and when native German speakers describe the sun, the word association in their mind is also feminine. For example, the sun is beautiful, the sun is attractive, etc., etc. Did you notice how slight difference in a language changes the whole perception of us to look at the world around us? Let me give you another example. What will you say if one of your arm bone is broken? In Urdu, you will certainly say that my arm is broken, but in the English language, it would be perfectly normal to say that I broke my arm. which might imply that you yourself broke your arm. And Urdu speakers will certainly consider him insane, assuming that perhaps he himself caused an injury. Notice how a slight difference of language can alter our opinion about people. Our language directly influences the way we think, and based on our language then, we render our strategies and our reactions. For instance, take this last example. If someone tells me, Furkan, I broke my arm before his treatment, my mind will immediately think of a blame factor against him, that perhaps he broke his arm himself, and more than his recovery. I would be more concerned about his mental health based on his language. My reaction towards him will entirely be different. Language is such a powerful thing that without which our brain cannot even think. I will give you a practical example. Think of anything in your mind, anything at all, and if I'm not wrong, then your brain will immediately start to think in your native language against this question. Without language, your brain is not even able to think or understand. As per the Arabic of Quran is concerned, or the Arabic spoken in the 7th century Arabia, have you ever had a chance to study Lisan al-Arab, the language of Arabia, the largest Arabic dictionary in the world, comprised on 18 volumes, but it contains the 7th century Arabic spoken in or prior to the time of Prophet, when Arab poets used to compete in the eloquence of their language abilities. Let me give you an example for this Arabic. Take the word aqwad, for example, and see how slightest change in the word can alter the entire meaning of the whole word. The first example is uqad, which means a necklace. The second example is iqad, which means a decade. The third example is aqwad, which means a contract. The fourth example is aqwada, which means held. The fifth example aqwada, which means complicated or complex. And the sixth example, uqad, meaning knots. Are you noticing how eloquent and extensive the 7th century Arabic was? Sometimes I wonder who were those people who used to speak such language. I wonder how much their brain was able to form such complex strategies. I will give you another example. In the year 636 AD, a severe battle was fought between Christians and Muslims at Yarmouk. The battle continued for 6 days, and on the second day, Khalid bin Walid, accompanied with 60 men, collided with 5 armies from Byzantine Empire and won. Historian Humphrey writes that Romans were lucky to have 5 armies by their side, but it was a bad luck that what they were facing was strategies by Khalid bin Walid. What were those strategies? What kind of minds were able to formulate them? What complex language their brains were thinking in that defeated 5 armies from the Roman Empire? I'm sure you must have heard about algebra. We all have somehow studied algebra in school at one point or another, but have you ever wondered why X is always the unknown in algebra? Let me tell you something very interesting. The people who introduced Europe to the study of algebra were actually Muslims, and European language did not have a word to translate algebra in them. Even when they tried, the translation was something like the system for reconciling disparate parts. So the word algebra was left alone without translating it. But in the Arabic version of algebra, the word used for the unknown value was ash-shai. I and you, since we speak Urdu, so we know that ash-shai means something in Arabic, but there is no equal of Arabic sh in any European language. So they adopted a Greek symbol, chi, because its pronunciation was closer to the pronunciation of word ash-shai. And later in Latin translations of these books, the symbol of chi, which looks like an X, was eventually transformed into the English letter. If I be honest, the X from algebra is still a memory today of the European ignorance towards the Arabic word of ash-shai. I'm not talking about algebra alone, but Abu al-Qasim Zarawi, from Al-Andalus, also known as Al-Buqaysis. He wrote a book called Kitab at-Tasrif on Ajaz Ali. Do you know the translation of these 5 Arabic words? The compilation of medical achievements for someone who cannot write a book. If these 5 words can translate into 13 words, imagine the 30-volume book itself. and this is the book which contains entire medical knowledge of its time. Do you see how the proper use of language and its eloquence gave them a much improved thought process? Let me show you some Arabic words which have virtually no translation in other languages, and after I show you these words, I want you to imagine that the thought process of someone who speaks a language at this level of depth would be what? Compared to the thought process of a typical speaker. Its first example, the Arabic word fanra, which means the end of self-love. The second word mab3al, meaning the experiences of life that harden you. Third word todain, a contract in which no one is at loss. Kif, something that brings you instant bliss. Karaya, doing something which brings a certain relaxation to heart, a mind that thinks in such in-depth language. How able would it be to handle complex matters with ease? You will also find such words in other languages, for example classical Latin. But since the subject of this chapter is Quranic Arabic, I have given examples from the 7th century Fusha Arabic. The reason to tell you all this is to make you understand that when our brain starts to think in an unintelligent and lowest form of language, then we lose our ability to formulate complex thought process or strategies. During the research for this documentary, I had to study different cultures from all over the world. These cultures included the 7th century Norse culture, and naturally I came to study the Vikings. Vikings were a group of warriors that emerged in the 7th century, an ultimate warrior nation who ruled the sea, making perfect warships, leaving Norway, Sweden and Denmark on their warships, and used to attack countries like England. They were such a fierce tribe that England had to come under the rulership of 2 Viking kings. Ahmed bin Fadlan was an Arab traveler who spent some time with the Vikings, and he writes about them. They are tall and strong like date trees. They have golden blonde hair and strong features. Each of them has tattoos from nose to the neck, and every man carries an axe, a dagger or a sword. Physically, they are the perfect people, unmatched by anyone in their fighting skills. But have you ever wondered why Vikings appear in history in the first place? The reason for Vikings' appearance was strategies of Arab Andalusian Muslims, which brought Muslim Portugal and Spain bounties like gold, silver, finest oil, silk, oranges and plenty of different delicacies. And what does a merchant want? Profit. So the merchants of Italy and France turned their face towards Muslim Spain and Portugal because paying a small tax there was nothing compared to the business opportunities and benefits. And what did Norway and Denmark have? Goat hides, sheep wool. No merchant wanted that. If I be honest, the 7th century Arabic-speaking Muslim strategies had dried up the wealth and riches of Norway, Sweden and Denmark, and this was the reason why those people appeared as Vikings and reached England in desperate attempts to regain the wealth, and this is how they emerge in history. In fact, these Vikings even attacked Muslim cities of Seville and Lisbon from sea. But the strategies of finest language speakers took only 100 days to clear the cities of Seville and Lisbon from the invasion of Vikings, and during this time, many Vikings turned to Islam. I will show you a ring that was discovered from the grave of a Viking queen, which has the name of Allah inscribed on it, and using the skills of these Viking Muslims, they created new warships, and from there, through the Rhone River, Muslims reached the country of Switzerland where, for the next 150 years, the rule remained of Arabian Muslims. Do you see how languages can become the power of nations, comprising 18 volumes? The largest Arabic dictionary called Lisan al-Arab, which is actually derived from Quran. This is the original Arabic Prophet Muhammad used to speak, which was so eloquent that often many companions of Prophet used to ask him the meaning of many words. You must have heard such a hadith, where companions of Prophet would hear an Arabic word from him the first time. For example, the hadith from the collection of Bukhari where Prophet said, "There will come a time when the mischief, ignorance and harj shall prevail," and the companions asked, "O Messenger of Allah, what is this harj?" And the Prophet replied, "An unjust killing." Prophet Muhammad was a man who spoke the finest version of Arabic. In fact, In the collection of Masnad Ahmed, there is a hadith about the language of the Prophet, that Allah has blessed me with a comprehensive speech, meaning the ability to convey more with fewer words. And let me tell you that the students of Prophet who used to inquire the meanings of new words, these students were not typical Bedouins either. On the contrary, they were the Arabs who wrote the epic poems of Mu'allaqat, the finest epic of Arabia, comprised of 7 poems, hung with the wall of Kaaba, once for its grandeur and splendor, unmatched in its majesty by any other poem or literary work of its time. Quranic Arabic is not a normal Arabic. It is the word of Allah. It is the finest speech according to Surah Zumar. And let me tell you that the weight of Quranic Arabic was such that it sort of fractured the human language, and this is the reason why there are newer translations of Quran every second year, because each time new discoveries are made from the Arabic of Quran. Perhaps now you will be able to imagine that in the very beginning of Quran, in the 23rd verse of Surah Baqarah, why the entire world of disbelievers are challenged openly. Create a word like this, if you can, and you can never, and we will be tested this word. We will judge which one of you will perform better, who will learn this finest word, will understand it, will develop the strategies of his life, and will be successful by it. At the end of this chapter, I want to tell you that according to Surah Rum, in our colors and languages there are differences, and it bears signs for those unknowledgeable. Language is a gift from Allah. I told you in the beginning that there are 7,000 languages spoken in the world today, but what I did not tell you was that half of the world speaks only 23 languages from them. There are languages in it which only have 11 alphabets, but they are proper and entire languages. There is a language called Basque, which is the most isolated language in the world, whose words cannot be found in any other language of the world. It includes Chinese that does not have alphabets, but it is written in symbols. It includes languages which only utilize one side of your brain, the left side, and then there are languages which activate the both sides of brain. Language is a miraculous gift from Allah, which is innate in human beings since beginning, but transforms after every few decades. For this chapter I conducted extensive studies on the languages of the world, and if I be honest, the miracle of language alone is enough to show the signs of Allah. It was the miracle, the gift, which was never possible in evolution. He is the gift which was bestowed to Adam upon his creation. He was dignified among the other creatures, and then, with this gift, he was sent to this world, and from this moment on, starts the story of me, you and all the children of Adam.